The vice president gets called out live in front of the press pool and very quickly backs away. Like, think about that. That's the VP. And this is the best they have. In any case, let's get to the live press briefing where JD Vance is, treat Lorite JD Vance is actually delivering a conference here, and we'll get started there, and we'll continue from there on out.
A little bit more careful. We're going to talk about toning down the temperature, which I know the president wants to do, and I certainly want to do. The temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you.
Never mind, he's done. Okay.
Reasonable is for so much with this most recent. It's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number 2, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP.
Yeah, so JD Vance, the vice president, went up today on the podium in the White House in front of the press pool and tried to do what he was, what he was hired to do, basically, aside from being Peter Thiel's blood boy. JD Vance's main position in the administration is to try and normalize and liberalize the commentary coming from the unlimited horrors that this administration is dishing out on a daily basis. Donald Trump will come out and say, we're invading Venezuela for oil. JD Vance will come out and go, actually, oil is an important resource, but it's also illegal for Maduro to be delivering drugs like that. His role is to talk to MSNBC voters to a certain degree, or at least to keep the independents on board. But of course, his higher ambition is to try and win the presidency in 2028 if there is ever an election again. And for that reason, he's constantly finding himself leaning into some of the most vicious white supremacist attitudes, despite having an Indian wife and Indian children. And also, engaging in this actually as commentary. So actually, he's, I think, stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that's the reason why he comes across as very disingenuous, and everybody ends up hating him, because the racists don't like him because his wife is Indian, and he comes across as like a disingenuous lib, and the liberals don't like him because he's obviously eating Trump's every single day. So he can't present himself as the moderate, reasonable figure, and he can't present himself as the guy who will bring about the white nationalist, terror state. So that's besides the point, though. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background onto what JD Vance's goal is here, what JD Vance's role is here, and then talk about what he's doing in terms of the commentary that you can expect from him.
Fraud, so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud
has been ID'd as well. From what I understand, at least last night when I was checking in on this stuff, people were saying that he was already running away. The ICE agents were basically trying to get him to escape the state for some reason, which is, he's the most innocent man alive. I don't understand. Shocking, but he's already out of state.
Almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General. First of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it, but importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. And here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And
that is what happened. And no, they didn't even do that, as a matter of fact. They did not do that. They actually normalized this violence because that's just usually the position of state media and mainstream media in general, which is whenever state violence occurs, they will use neutral language, passive tone, as we've talked about quite extensively. It's basically 2020 coverage all over again. This is like post George Floyd, Black Lives Matter coverage all over again. Once again, it's about unjustifiable state violence, and that's what it was. And now that unjustifiable state violence is obviously extended out not just to like unarmed black teenagers that are disproportionately targeted by the police, but a federal law enforcement apparatus called ICE that is even less accountable than local law enforcement, that is going door to door to try to find illegals, as they like to say, in the same way that the Gestapo did, the same way that the Nazis did, and killing people in the process. So whenever these guys are actually talking about like the state is actually not, or the media is not actually playing ball, what they mean is they're not servile enough. And it's crazy because they are pretty servile. They demand more fealty. They want more Barry Weiss style commentary on this. They want to prop up every single thing that's going on. Okay. And I feel every now and then, whenever I see this kind of commentary, I think to myself, especially when I see the kind of like hypocrisy, I think to myself, I wonder if they're just like doing it deliberately to try to train their audience into not giving a shit about the inconsistencies. It almost feels like they want to train their cult into identifying the violence, being on board with the violence, and loving the violence and demanding more of it for their ideological enemies. Which cult? Which cult do you think I could be talking about? The cult that you're seeing in front of you, the MAGA cult. Okay. Republicans that look at a situation that I think a couple years past, maybe a decade ago, would consider it to be, would consider this moment to be a unifying moment, to consider it to be a completely unjustifiable instance of violence, have now decided this is good. This is actually good.
Say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. You have every right. You have every right to document public servants that are engaging in illegal actions. Okay? It is in the law. Not that we don't even have enough evidence on whether or not that's what Renee Nicole Good was doing in that moment. It doesn't matter. Even if she was doing that, it is still perfectly legal. Legal observers have been around in every single protest in United States history and protests all around the world. Okay? The fact that they are trying to present this as distorting law enforcement operations or obstructing law enforcement operations is completely ridiculous. And there's also some inconsistencies here as well. Both Renee's parents or Renee's ex's father, or not ex, sorry. Renee Good was widowed in 2023. And her father-in-law said that, and her mother as well had said that she was not an activist at all. Now, that might have changed, but it doesn't even matter. Like, this inconsistency here is utterly irrelevant, because even if she was, what she was doing was perfectly permissible, perfectly within the bounds of reason. It's completely ridiculous that the media is not calling to account what this administration is saying and doing. Okay? Calling a person that you slaughtered with your unaccountable Gestapo force a terrorist is insane to me. Do you think this will work? I don't think it will work. I do not think it will work, partially because the victim's background. I think this makes it much harder for the administration to defend. In many circumstances, we've seen similar versions of this when it's like a black teenager that is immediately presented as a violent force in the media. But you can't really do that when most Americans will identify someone like Renee with their aunts, with their sisters, with their cousins, with their mothers. That's it. She was a kind person who was in her own neighborhood, and she was shot by a fat Gestapo agent that was airdropped into this area to do violence, to hurt people, and he ended up hurting someone. And yes, the killer has already been identified, and we'll be talking about that as well, obviously, in a second. I just wanted to dive really quickly into this official narrative that's coming out, okay? I know that victims do not have to be perfect, and in many circumstances, they're not. We don't choose to highlight people we don't turn people into martyrs. It's the state that turns people into martyrs, and their background is utterly irrelevant in this circumstance. But she's as close to a perfect victim as you can get, and I think that's the reason why a lot of normies will identify themselves with and align with Renee Good rather than the state itself. Can you check my chat? There's a creator you have to connect with. Chatter, not the time. Okay? Please.
And to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognized.
The convo with Asman was so insane yesterday. He admitted that she didn't intend to hit the ICE officer, and she also didn't hit him, but somehow her execution was still justified. Yes. These guys do not have a real world view. I need you to understand. Most Republicans, Asmongold here is just a catch-all for he's like a vessel for the worst of the worst right-wing fascist reactionaries of all different sorts here. But the commentary is the same. Okay, a lot of these guys that you see on the internet that are, defending this sort of thing right now are just going off of their whims. They don't really have anything. They don't have a leg to stand on. They just saw an instance of violence that the state engaged in, and their first position was to say, well, let's try and justify this violence because obviously this cowardly little baby who executed someone in broad daylight was probably in the right, okay? And that's precisely what took place. Oh, I saw this. I know what this is. Yeah, I saw this one. XQC, to be honest, if only last two things you can be are bootlicker and a terrorist, I'll be a bootlicker. That's my class. XQC in his chat defending the murder of ICE agents, or murder by ICE agents of a mother of three, a poet who was simply trying to get home. I mean, that is how some people slot themselves, okay? They slot themselves in this way. They decide, you know, if there's only, yes, take the random chat as a fact. What random chat? What random chat did I take as a fact? I'm not going to do this, actually. There's going to be a lot of derailers in the chat today while I'm trying to go through the serious stuff real quick. But what is this? It's a lot worse. What? Woke up too early. Damn. Nothing to debunk. Far left defending terrorists. This is the daily routine now. Yawn. The main problem is people defend everyone like their life depends on it. They want no one to go to jail, but want to kill every intellectual opponent. Here's the daily debunk. Draw a gun at police, get shot. Drive at police, get shot. Any other argument is propagated by domestic terrorists. I like that the environment that these guys are actually cultivating is basically if a cop with a weapon is around your car at any moment, they can just shoot and kill you, and then it's totally appropriate. Especially considering that we figured out that this guy has done this exact same thing in the past as well. They walk up to a car, not from the side as they're supposed to, because the law enforcement officer manual dictates that they're not supposed to walk up to a car directly, and they're never supposed to shoot at a car, because obviously if you shoot at a car, that car can turn into that car can turn into a deadly weapon if you kill the driver. Okay, so it's so unimaginably, it is so utterly ridiculous. Okay, and yes, Washington Post went frame by frame and found out that shot one was fired while both of this guy's feet were firmly on the side of the car. Shot two was fired from behind the steering wheel at that point with the open window, and so was shot three, like far after the car had actually passed them. This person didn't make a split-second decision in the way that they're presenting it. He had a phone camera in his hand. Okay, I need you to understand, he did not fear for his life. And a lot of those instances, a lot of those statements are obviously going to factor into the court case, if there is even a court case at all, because the reality of the matter is he came in, he had a phone camera in his one hand, he circled around the car, came to the other side of the car, pulled out his gun with his phone in his other hand, pulled out his gun, car passes him by, he shoots from the side of the windshield, as you saw. Okay, from the front of the windshield, but literally from the side of the car. And then shot two and shot three are directly fired after the car has passed them, long after the car has passed them. Not only putting others in jeopardy, not only assassinating this person, executing this person in broad daylight, but then also putting other people's lives in jeopardy in a area that he wasn't even supposed to be in to begin with. There was no reason for ICE to be there. There was no reason for ICE to try and aggressively posture towards this person who was waving them away, waving them off. It was cold-blooded, state-sanctioned murder, and anyone that tries to defend this cold-blooded, state-sanctioned murder is a delusional bootlicker, a delusional loser who is actively trying to cope with the trauma of recognizing that this state is going to do unlimited violence, and you either actually push back against that unlimited violence and you say enough is enough, we have to stop this, or you just let it happen and hope that it never happens to you. And unfortunately for many of us, especially in the crowded field of entitled, spoiled, neurodivergent Twitch streamers, there are going to be plenty of unimaginably privileged Twitch streamers that have millions and millions of dollars in net worth that never really leave their homes, that will turn around and act like this is actually totally normal. Just remember that. And before people say, says you, I do put my body out there, and I do actually put my money where my mouth is. These guys do not. They recognize their position in society, and they keep telling their audience, who could very well be the next victim of state violence, that the state violence is correct no matter what, no matter who, no matter how. Enough is enough. Okay? Enough is enough. So if you're wondering where a lot of these people are coming from in your day-to-day, where your coworkers are getting these like ridiculous ideas from, that watched the same exact video that you did, but then they came to a very different conclusion. Some of them already have the American serf mindset. They're already servile. They're ready to lick the boot. Their automatic conditioning is cops are correct no matter what they do. They can come into your house. They can literally your life up. They can your family members, and you'll still have to get down on one knee and kiss their rings and say, well, sorry, if you did it to me, then I probably deserve it. This is the attitude that some people have, unfortunately. But that attitude is not reflected in broader society. There are obviously people that, regardless of how much they love police, how much they think like people are doing the right thing or trying to do their very best here and there are obviously still people who go, this is a situation, okay? This is a situation. You don't have to be woke or a liberal to recognize that this is a completely unacceptable situation. If anything, you are in a cult if you look at the situation and think, no, there is a reason for this. There is a justification for this, and I think I'm going to try to figure out a justification for this no matter what. But what matters here is that if you're wondering where these justifications are coming from, okay, it's people like Asmongold. It's people who are right-wing, who are at least like propagandizing in the right-wing position and trying to give people a reason to believe that this was a justifiable act of state-sanctioned violence when it very clearly wasn't. And for a lot of people, they want to believe that the state is still working. The state is actually not completely crippled, okay? That there is probably a good reason for this. They don't want to snap out of the senseless this ridiculous reality that they've built around themselves, that like, Trump maybe isn't doing everything right, or maybe Trump isn't actually clearly putting your best interest and the interests of like all American citizens at his primary focus, and maybe he's just defending the interests of the elite and his favorite friends. Okay, it is ridiculous. Don't say both sides are completely wrong in their actions. Okay, getting hostile gets you killed. This kind of centrist nonsense is bullshit. Okay, it's not big brain. You are not actually impressing any of your peers with how intelligent you are. You are unfortunately trying to find a more intellectually consistent position in this circumstance. Okay, the power is in the hands of the state. You have to understand. And with great power comes great responsibility. Okay? And when you have the power to end someone's life, okay, at any given moment, you need to carry that responsibility everywhere you go. So no, there is a much higher bar to clear in the instance of defending murder, in the instance of defending manslaughter, and wearing a badge that says police, ICE, or federal law enforcement doesn't change that reality. A life was taken unjustifiably, and there was no reason for that life to be taken. So anyone that is trying to victim blame in this circumstance is not actually presenting themselves as a brilliant person at all. They are just moronic and desperately trying to find any out here that tells them, no, actually, there has to be good reason for this. Sometimes there isn't. Okay? Sometimes there isn't. In this case, there is not. You don't have to immediately try to find a justification for senseless murder, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say every single cop or every single agent is behaving in this. Every single ICE agent is behaving with like unlimited death and destruction, even though ICE is pretty close to that. Let's be real. And these unjustifiable violent structures exist in a way to pacify the part of your brain, or to destroy the part of your brain. If you're in one of these organizations, it destroys the part of your brain that thinks about every single person that you're dealing with as though they're real human beings with lives, with children, with loved ones that they're leaving behind. When you actually end their life, when you kill them, right? But ultimately, everyone is trying to do their very best, I guess, and then there are a lot of people who end up on the wrong side of it. Okay. Having said that, however, You can have the capacity to look at a situation like this. I believe in you, and realize right from wrong. Okay. Like I said yesterday, this is not about left versus right. This is about right versus wrong. If you cannot say that it is wrong for federal agents that are untrained to get drop shipped into a neighborhood at the mercy of the president, to go and cause terror and panic in said neighborhood, and then end up killing someone after giving them conflicting information, after giving them conflicting commands, as cops are known to do, okay, in a lot of different circumstances, and then assassinating them in broad daylight, and your first inclination is to defend the law enforcement agent here, you are out of your mind, okay? I don't think you understand. You are not a cop. You are not an ICE agent. Stop fantasizing about being the ICE agent in this situation, and start recognizing the reality that you are closer, or your loved ones are closer to being the next Renee Good than they are the murderous cop, okay? And then it's like, imagine if you shoot a fake gun at a police and say, dude, that tip was orange. How about not do that? Cars are deadlier than guns. I've been saying it for years. You can't say I'm grifting. I've spammed this to chat. I always say that vehicles are weapons. It's not great policing to stand in front of cars, but it's not great civilianing to press the gas pedal when being asked to stop and people are in front. The word murder will lose its value. People keep using it this way. Add to the list of shit that cucks are buzzwording. Imagine your mother says, I'm not teaching you nothing today. I got to go block traffic with my car. Poor kid. Like, trying to find a way to turn this into a Michael Brown style situation. Like, if you've been in this game for a long enough time, you've already seen this, right? Whenever there is another victim of police violence and that victim is a black teenager, the media will get up in arms and try to find the laundry list of reasons as to why this person was actually a criminal, right? Doing that to a 37-year-old woman is only going to negatively polarize you to the rest of this country. I'll be honest. And I don't think these guys recognize that. And the reason why they don't recognize it is because they are so locked in an echo chamber on the internet, getting constant negative feedback from Twitter, making them think that like everyone is a rugged white supremacist. Okay? It's completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. These guys are not really thinking clearly about any of this shit. They're just simply leaning into audience feedback. It's not content. Have a brain, please. Have a goddamn brain. You have the capacity to recognize right from wrong. It's so unimaginably cruel. Your output here is so cruel. And not only that, but you look like a goddamn monster, because you are a monster. Let's be real. You are a goddamn monster. If you see this incident and your first inclination is, how do I justify this? How do I make this seem like it was normal? How do I make this seem like it was warranted? You're a monster. You're a cruel, monstrous piece of shit, okay? But fear not. People will forget. People will forget about your horrible worldview eventually.
That you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car.
Yeah, she was not trying to do that. She was not trying to do that at all. There's no evidence to suggest that she was trying to do that. All evidence, once again, presents the opposite, okay? All evidence that we have seen so far presents the exact opposite reality. And I'm going to go through it real quick. Once again, okay? As far as we know, from all of the additional angles that have come out, okay? From everything that has taken place, down to the fact that this cop was not actually in fear for his life, I'm going to show you this angle that we hadn't seen yesterday. Video of the Minneapolis ICE shooting completely contradicting ICE's account that the driver was trying to ram anyone. Looks like they were turning around to leave and immediately lit up. So what takes place here, we've seen the main video, right? But we had not seen this angle before. This is the guy who is actually the person who ends up, the ICE agent who ends up murdering. Jonathan Ross is his name, for the record. This is Jonathan Ross. He was dragged in a separate incident last year by a fleeing driver, according to court records. Jonathan Ross is here. He has a phone camera. He has his phone out, filming people, and you'll see in a second. Look, on his right hand is his phone. He's filming people. He's fixing his mask up. And if you notice something, if you've seen the original video, you already know this, but Renee Good is in the car. Okay. Renee Good is in the car. She's trying to move the car, but because there are a lot of, there's a lot of commotion. There is a lot of commotion going on. Okay. There's a lot of commotion going on as you can see, the car is already moving here, right? Look. She'll move forward a little bit, but then ICE agents in separate vehicles get in front of her. Okay. From the other angle that we've seen, waves them away because she's very clearly trying to leave. Okay. She stops right here. First car goes, and you can see her waving them away in the first video. Then this pickup truck that is an unmarked pickup truck with lights on also comes through, and she's still waving them away, but it stops. Instead of passing her and then letting her, merge into the lane and leave, the pickup truck stops. They get out of the truck. 2 ICE agents get out of the truck and instantly start yelling at her. One is, they've already very clearly given her the order to leave the area. Okay. But this one runs in and tries to get her out of the car. Backs up. And then while she's turning around, the first shot is fired. And then the second and third shot is fired, ending up killing Renee Good. And for the record, he still has his phone. That's footage. That is footage. That will be evidence. He had his phone in his hands. And these guys want to tell you, these guys want you to believe that this dickhead who was running around with his phone in his hand, filming everything, was actually in fear of his life. These want to tell you that the first shot that was fired when the car had actually passed them, was a totally justifiable shot. The second shot was shot behind Renee Good. The third one as well, when the car had long passed this person. And these guys want to tell you, these guys want to have you believe that what you saw with your own 2 eyes is actually a lie and that you should listen to their narrative instead. We're not doing that. We're not playing that game, okay? It's completely ridiculous that there are people out there who are, trying to hit this like partisan angle on a situation that's like very clearly not supposed to be partisan at all. Like, if we cannot, as a society, arrive at the conclusion that a 37-year-old woman in her own neighborhood should not be assassinated by an ICE agent who's hopped up on fumes because she happened to be in a car in the vicinity of an ICE agent, okay, getting contradicting and conflicting information and conflicting commands from all these other people. If we cannot agree on that, we can't agree on anything. It's over. And then instantly she's called a terrorist. This is yet another turning point, in my opinion. In my estimation, this is another turning point. Okay? We have now arrived at yet another turning point where from this point on, there's going to be people who are slotted in to the assumption that no matter who the state kills, even if it's their grandparents, they'll be like, nope, well, they probably deserved it. What was grandma doing? Victim blaming every step of the way. Anyway, I got to pee real quick.
He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, "When things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863, and I think we may be in that moment now." Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
Unrelated question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents in your talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic.
He's right. Yeah, dude. Everyone that the state kills is automatically a far left lunatic. Totally. It's pretty crazy that this is, I mean, they're very clearly positioning themselves as saying, like, anyone that we kill, we can just get away with killing. Anyone that we kill, we can get away with killing because everyone that we kill automatically becomes a far left domestic terrorist lunatic. And some of you don't understand what that means, okay? Because you can't see yourself ever being victim to this kind of state enforcement, repression, or violence. You unironically think, no, he's right, dude. Everyone that the state kills is a far left lunatic. If you think a 37-year-old poet who left behind multiple children in her own neighborhood is a far left lunatic domestic terrorist because the state decided to kill her, it's over for you. You're not going to make it. And it's crazy because, like, we were trained on this for the last 2 years, but Hamas, human shields, but Hamas. And I think, like, a lot of people just go, but Hamas, even when it comes to their own neighbors in their own backyard, in their own suburbs. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. What is this? I don't know why I can't see the tweet, the link that you sent me. Totally justified shooting, not even close. Curious about these stickers on the back of the car. Various whack job groups and affiliations. These are U.S. national parks stickers, dude. Like, can you imagine? Even if it wasn't, even if it was anything else, like, oh, well, she had scary stickers on the back of her car, so I think it's okay that she got a... That's the desperation that you're hearing from the right today. I mean, this is literally... When people ask, like, how did the broader... How did the broad majority of German society get on board with the actions of the Nazis when they were just, like, kidnapping people from the streets and sending them God knows where, which we now know were concentration camps and death camps, right? You're watching it unfold. You were right about this being a filter for actual animals yesterday. Yeah, you are lower than a goddamn slug in my eyes if you look at a situation like this and find yourself defending the state violence. Like, how can you not see? You have... It's crazy because it literally... Like, you have no... You're not even an animal, right? Because even an animal has self-preservation. You don't have self-preservation. You cannot comprehend that you are giving permission to the state to do this to you as well. If you don't stand in opposition to this, it's going to get worse. Even an animal looks for shelter. Even an animal looks for self-preservation. You don't have self-preservation. You are justifying unlimited state violence that will inevitably come your way. I cannot believe it. I cannot comprehend it. I don't understand how people operate this way. I know things seem impossible. Things seem awful, okay? I understand that you're too busy worrying about your own shit. And it's much easier to slot yourself and to allow others, slot yourself into a political delineation, an ideology, team sports, and allow others to make to do your thinking for you, to just, like, repeat something that your team is saying. But this is an opportunity for you to snap out of it, okay? And if you can't snap out of it here, then I don't even know if you'll ever snap out of it. They keep escalating this insanity because they don't have a choice. The second they let up and give an inch to this absurdity, the whole thing falls apart like a house of cards. So they just have to manufacture an entirely new reality whole cloth. It's not tenable. You can't convince people a mother driving around with stuffed animals in her glove compartment was actually a cold-blooded domestic terrorist. You can't actually tell people their eyes are lying to them, but they'll pick anything other than a retreat. That's exactly what's going on here. And it blows my mind that there are people who are trying to put themselves in this predicament where they're like, no, she is a domestic terrorist. Yeah. This is what happened to Charlie Kirk and you guys celebrated it. Like, you don't understand. You do not understand what you are advocating for, what you're giving permission for. This is unironically, yes, Cloud District and Dory is right. This is suicidal empathy, I guess, in some ways. Empathy for the villain in the story. Suicidal misanthropy. They hate people so much that they're willing to put their own lives at risk to defend actions that will come back to them. The opposite of virtue signaling is vice signaling. And when you talk about suicidal empathy, what you're doing is unironically, you are justifying, you're signing off on your own demise. If you look at a situation like this and you think, oh, I'll be the powerful person here, I'll be the scared cop here in this situation, so I'm going to justify this state-sanctioned violence because I don't think it'll ever come to me. Even in this situation, if you're saying that, you are delusional. You're signing off on your own death warrant. Elon labeled a tweet you retweeted as sensitive content to limit its visibility. This one? Really? Anything that comes across as negative towards Asmongold, limited. Anything that is pro, Elon Musk constantly is base boosting Asmongold and many others. Asmongold is just one person, right? But I said here, the owner of this website is a real-life white identitarian who loves this guy and routinely boosts his shit, just like that mouth-breathing troglodyte who demanded to see children at Somali daycares. Your co-workers are getting brainwashed by the dumbest, most hateful people alive. It is information warfare. That is what's going on, for sure. Another sad case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes, but it's being dramatized. Brother, buddy, you're not coming across as like a based sociopath. You understand that, right? When you say stuff like that, nobody thinks you're being super cool. Everyone can see that behind this like veneer, there lies a very insecure man, okay? Not only an insecure man, but a stupid man. You are behaving in a way that actually will harm you, okay? It will inevitably harm you. Is the reality of the situation, dude? No, the reality of the situation is that an ICE agent that was not even supposed to be in that neighborhood, if it wasn't for the whims of the goddamn president who wants to get people's attention off the Epstein files, sent 2,000 DHS and ICE agents into Minneapolis for no reason, okay? And then these goddamn untrained losers, one of these goddamn untrained losers ended up shooting someone in broad daylight for the crime of being in a goddamn vehicle that is moving away, responding to the previous commands that were given to her. And you look at that situation and you still try to justify it. She let off the brakes to try to hit a car that passed by. Is so like you are theory crafting here against something that we can all see with our own two eyes. And I know, listen to me. I know that you feel lonely and you think that there is a sense of community here, okay? There is a sense of community here where you think if I defend this stuff, I won't lose my friends online. I won't lose my shared purpose online. But you can be your own individual man and think critically, okay? I beg you to have some common sense, dude. Please be a normal adult. Be a real human being for once. If you can't say that this was wrong, then there is nothing that you think is wrong. There is never going to be an instance where you think is wrong. You will always find a way to justify it because this is such a black and white situation. It's such a black and white situation, and yet you've still decided that these guys are telling you this is a partisan issue, okay? That this person was a radical left-wing domestic terrorist. If this was black and white in the opposite direction, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about everything. They wouldn't feel the need to lie about how this person is a radical left-wing domestic terrorist, how she was definitely trying to kill an ICE agent by ramming the car, how the victim here was the actual ICE agent who was in the hospital. Like, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about everything if the situation that you could see with your own two eyes was black and white in the opposite direction. If she was like very clearly, you know, someone who was trying to kill cops, like someone who was trying to kill ICE agents in that situation, ram their car into these ICE agents, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about it. But if the evidence that you can see with your own two eyes is contradicting what the party is telling you that you must believe, at a certain point, you have to snap out of it. And if you still can't snap out of it in this situation, there is never, ever going to be a moment where you realize right from wrong. Okay? That's it. As a slow motion surveillance video of the shooting played on the laptop, we told him that this angle did not appear to show an ICE officer being run over. Well, Mr. Trump said, the way I look at it, it's a terrible scene, Mr. Trump said at the end of the video. I think it's horrible to watch. No, I hate to see it. So even Trump himself could not actually sit there, watch the video, and say, yeah, no, this is totally justifiable. This was cool. This was A-okay. Okay? And yet there are still content creators on this platform and on Twitter that are running around telling you, you have to believe it. You have to believe that this was good. This was good. She was a terrorist. She was a terrorist. Does that not even for one moment cause you to think maybe these guys are lying to me? Not even in this instance. Because if you can't see it now, I don't know if you can ever see it. I'm going to show you one more time the interior of this car, okay? Because I think this is a powerful image. Renee Nicole Good was 37 years old. The ICE agent stopped a doctor on the scene from giving her aid. They blocked the road so the EMTs arrived on foot. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called her a domestic terrorist before she was in the ambulance, before they could officially pronounce her dead, basically. Do you think this person was a domestic terrorist? If you cannot realize that this is a perfect distillation of how if someone is killed by the state, they will always find reason. They will always find a justification. They will always call them a terrorist. If you cannot even empathize and identify a person that is more likely to be your neighbor, your mother, your cousin, your sister, a loved one, if you can't even recognize the humanity of a 37-year-old lady, a kind-hearted person with plushy toys in her glove compartment, and you reject what you can see with your own two eyes, and you just go, nope, that person is a villain. Why? Because the government told me so. I don't think you can ever see the truth ever again. This was a woman protecting her community. She was going out of her way to stand up for her neighbors and people she didn't know. People like this are the best of us, and that's why they want to kill people like her. Exactly. Exactly. You don't have to agree with my worldview on anything. That's not even the argument that I'm making here, okay? You don't have to agree with me on the fact that, these immigrants are actually some of the best people that we have in American society. You might think that's okay. You might go, nah, I don't believe you. They're scary, whatever. I'm not even going to argue on that point right now. I think you're wrong, but I'm not even arguing on that point right now. I am trying to find common humanity in this moment. If you cannot find common humanity here with something that is so transparently, blaringly obvious, it's grating how unjustifiable this instance was. And if you cannot see that, then you might be lost. Something that you can see with your own two eyes, you are rejecting. Ultimately, what the state is creating here is a permission structure where if you happen to be around an ICE agent under any circumstance, whether you're retreating, whether they just had a bad day, whether they were in fear for their lives, even if they have their phone out filming you in the process, if they kill you, you deserved it. That's it. This is a precedent-setting moment. Do you understand? And some of you that still try to defend this situation, some of you that still try to defend this situation are unironically writing off you're writing off your own death sentence, okay?
Fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American People's Administration to enforce the American People's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that
this wasn't even a legitimate law enforcement operation. This was an illegitimate law enforcement operation, by the way.
We are going to get tougher, and that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement.
Look, see, for every person that yells at me about, like, why are you covering Asmongold or whatever, there are people like this. I was an Asmongold watcher in college. He mentioned you and the rest was history. Been a sub for 3 years now. Joined the DSA and all. Keep talking, friend. I came over from Asmon months ago and woke up. You're doing God's work. Okay? Many of you don't realize that you were in a similar predicament before. Maybe it was 5 years ago. Maybe it was 10 years ago when you were watching Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson. Asmongold is just a new name, a new person that is advocating for the same exact vicious commentary that justifies all this stuff. Okay? That's it. People come and go. Okay? We have had ordained villains in this community for the last decade. You know, it's not new. I have to continue to hope that people have an open mind and can be charitable, especially in important moments like this, where they can actually see right from wrong. This is an opportunity for a lot of people to go, you know what? Fuck. I thought this guy was awful, but it turns out like he's kind of being reasonable here. The other side is being not so common sense based, okay? I come in peace from Asmus Shot. He lost it in the last couple of months and now you're making sense. Never thought I'd be here. Yeah, you have to understand. This is the point. You were one of my main eye openers to see Peterson and Elon and Shapiro for the grifting psychos they are back in like 2018. Exactly. There were so many people. There are so many people in this community that came from that kind of background that thought, you know, that the world was a certain way and that these guys like Ben Shapiro and whatnot were actually telling them the truth. When in fact, all they were doing is basically telling you like, no, the systems that you are experiencing, the cruelty that you're seeing, you know, the struggles that you go through in your day-to-day, whether it be trying to make rent, whether it be trying to pay for groceries, all that stuff is actually good because the alternatives are scary. And everyone tells you that there is a better future possible, that we can have more equitable outcomes. They're lying to you. They're communists. They're scary. They're radicals. They're dangerous. They're terrorists. And now they're trying to do that with this. Anyone who says, hey, I don't want masked public servants with no accountability murdering people in the street in broad daylight is a terrorist, is not a sustainable narrative for an administration. It's not a sustainable narrative for nation building. It's going to be pure chaos. It's mind-boggling. A state that calls a 37-year-old woman in her own neighborhood shot and killed in her Honda Pilot a terrorist will call you a terrorist with much greater ease, okay? Like, this is not even along racialized boundaries at this point. Like, it's moved up. The American government has always leaned into racialized narratives. White supremacy is a very powerful weapon to galvanize people, to get people to associate themselves with like a black victim that always deserves it, right? Like they always deserve it because they're scary, all this stuff. Same with undocumented people, same with brown people, same with victims of colonial violence overseas. But when that violence comes to your doorstep and the victim is someone even you can identify with, and they're still doing the same thing, they're still hitting the same lines, and you're still finding yourself duped by the government narrative, it might be over for you. Wake up!
Officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice, but we're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out, but here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent, or somebody tries...
First of all, even in those circumstances, it's not justifiable to assassinate someone, for the record. And I know you might disagree with me on that, but that's not even what happened. That's not even what happened. Why are you making up different things? It's because they cannot justify the situation with the facts that are presented. And that's the reason why they have to dive into hypotheticals. Well, what if she had what if she had a nuclear weapon that she was about to explode? And we've done this song and dance over and over again with Israel for the last 2 years. So obviously people who have been in this community for the last 2 years have already heard me argue against these talking points over and over again. Oh, well, what if she had a dangerous weapon? What if she had an AR-15 pointed in the direction of these beautiful law enforcement officers? Okay, what if?
Tries to run over an ICE agent. Who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it, who's supporting it, who's cheerleading it, and of course, if there's a legal act.
It also doesn't make sense, right? If she's a terrorist, then why is this a terrible incident? If she's a domestic terrorist, look, address the inconsistencies, even in the argumentation here. She's a violent terrorist that is a part of a violent terrorist network. So why is it a terrible incident that took place? If you killed a violent, gruesome terrorist, why are you sitting here and offering fake sympathy? Why is that the case? Shouldn't you be celebrating it? If anything, people like Asmongold who are celebrating it are at least more morally consistent here. I mean, obviously they're immoral and they're monstrous, but technically they're more logically consistent, right? At least they're celebrating the death of a 37-year-old woman, the execution of a 37-year-old woman by saying, well, she's a terrorist. So even that doesn't make sense. When you fell an enemy of the state, do you sit there and cry tears? No, you celebrate, right? So why aren't you celebrating in this circumstance? Perhaps it's because you realize that you're lying.
Activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her?
I came from Asman and I thought you were a terrorist empathizer. Yeah, maybe you now realize that they call everybody a terrorist. Okay? It's a post-mortem association that ends up justifying the act. One day they will call you a terrorist too, after they kill you or your loved ones. That's it. Why do you get so many viewers? You're boring. Because unfortunately, common sense is not so common, especially in this current media landscape where literally the dumbest positions are blasted in the orbit by some of the dumbest people you've ever encountered. And therefore, a lot of people actually breathe a sigh of fresh air when they encounter someone who goes, yeah, this stuff is crazy, actually. So perhaps that's the reason why a lot of people come in here. Maybe not because I'm the most entertaining person. It's not supposed to be entertaining, okay? This is supposed to be a moment for people to go, holy fuck, there are actually normal humans out here on the internet.
Is talking about very specific facts of these events. When an investigation is just beginning, are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have
That's bullshit. It's not a legitimate law enforcement operation. You're just saying that nobody debates that because you don't want to debate that. Because it would undermine everything that you're trying to do.
Who, you know, is not a terrorist, not an extremist. That was just a mom who loved her kids, loved her spouse. Yeah, that's who they're calling a terrorist, by the way. A domestic extremist, a domestic terrorist. Anyone and everyone that looks at the situation and says, nah, she's a terrorist, you will justify if the government kills your family, okay? At that point, you will literally turn around and say, oh, well, you know, maybe my mom deserved it too. That's it. That's it. It's crazy. That means you have signed off on state-sanctioned murder as long as you are in the vicinity of a cop, okay? If you're in the vicinity of a cop, if you're in the vicinity of an ICE agent, and they just shoot and kill you in broad daylight, and everyone can see it with their own two eyes, it is unjustifiable, cold-blooded murder, you'll still find a way to reason it. You'll still find a way to game it out. It's mind-boggling to me. I believe this is where he clicked away from the J.D. Vance presser.
Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events? When an investigation is just beginning, are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts, that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who was trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who...
It wasn't a legitimate law enforcement operation to begin with, and there is no evidence that she was trying to obstruct it anyway. But again, the state can say that. They will say that every time. And the reason why they're saying it is because they need to justify it. And the reason why they need to justify it is because the next time this happens, they have to justify it again, because they want your takeaway to be, don't be anywhere near an ICE agent, okay? And if you are accidentally near an ICE agent and they want to detain you, or they decide, like, illegally, for the record, because an ICE agent does not have legal grounds to detain you as an American citizen, for the record. It is a gray area that they abuse all the time. Just remember that. It is a legal gray area. An ICE agent actually does not have the legal right to detain you if you are an American citizen. You know that, right? They don't have it. They don't have it at all. They can, however, serve a judicial warrant or execute a judicial warrant if they have a suspicion that there is someone who is an immigrant who is engaged in who has engaged in like a criminal act or something. They can't just like do these dragnets though. Okay, they can't.
Aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left, who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe, against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what, you don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about immigration enforcement. But why don't...
It's not a gray area. The gray area is that they can detain immigrants. But how do you... Yeah, exactly. That's why I said it's a gray area. The gray area is that they can detain immigrants. But how do they know if you're an immigrant or an American citizen without seeing your ID when they don't have reasonable ground to actually detain you if you're an American citizen? That's why I said it's a gray area. How do you know whether someone is a citizen or not without detaining them? That's the problem with all of this. Exactly. That's it. That's what I mean when I say it is a gray area, okay? Because technically, ICE has no jurisdiction over you if you are an American citizen on U.S. soil. The only area where they might have some jurisdiction over you is a border crossing, and that's it. Customs and Border Patrol has jurisdiction over you as an American citizen, but they literally cannot stop you from entering the country as well. That's also illegal. They need some kind of probable cause or some kind of reason to be able to stop you from entering the country. It's actually unconstitutional for them to stop you from entering the country, okay? A lot of this stuff in the immigration side is in a legal gray area. This is precisely the reason why Donald Trump loves using immigration enforcement as a righteous cause to do whatever kind of action, whatever kind of activity he wants to do. It's all unconstitutional technically, but without the Supreme Court actually holding them to account, without the Democrats actually making a big fuss about it, he can get away with doing whatever the fuck he wants to. And that's it. That's where we're at.
Why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful, and it's got to stop.
Mr. President, just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country, over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out in Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding?
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. people trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials, that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job.
Oh no, the murderer, his life is going to be miserable, dude. After the poor little baby did a murder. No, dude, what? The poor baby did a murder and now is getting absolute immunity and also unlimited defense from a partisan perspective from the worst administration. Holy, don't hurt his feelings though. Like, do you understand the way that these guys communicate? It's like touch a hair on the head of someone that we have decided is a good guy, okay, someone on our side, no matter how evil they might be, no matter how evil their actions might be, and that's the unlimited crime. You can never even call out the crime itself. We will make it a crime to even call out a crime that our guys commit.
That he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue, that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis.
I need you to understand, this is the vice president, and one of his federal law enforcement agents killed a tax-paying citizen, okay? Renee Good is an American citizen. You, as the vice president, need to place her rights, her dignity, her life above the actions of your law enforcement, your federal law enforcement agencies. Just because you've decided that she's a leftist and a dangerous radical does not mean that you can behave this way. What are we doing? So ICE can just knock down doors, decide whoever is a leftist terrorist and kill them or detain them, throw them in prison, and you go, hey, hold on, you can't do that. They kill you. And then the government will say, nope, sorry, sucks to suck. You were a dangerous commie. How can you not comprehend that this is unimaginable violence? I mean, look, guys, as much as I shit on the Democrats and as much as I shit on Kamala Harris, and there's plenty to criticize them over, they would not do this, okay? They would not do this at all. It's not even a question. Sure, on foreign policy, we can have a different conversation, but this is completely unfettered and unrestricted fascism. We are moving in the direction of unfettered and unrestricted fascism. Now, of course, the Democrats in this situation are not actually locking in and doing what needs to be done here. They're not actually trying to present a serious response to the horrifying super violence that's coming, okay? And for that, I obviously am constantly frustrated, but Jesus Christ, dude, this is completely ridiculous. I mean, it's getting to a point where like other Republican administrations wouldn't do this either, and I despise them.
Officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff.
Wait, hold on. Again, it doesn't make sense. If she's a terrorist, if she's a part of a terror network, like, why don't you think it's a justifiable kill? I just don't get it. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. That's a good question. It's like, I thought you said this was like, she's basically a domestic ISIS, you know? Oh, well, she was trying to ram into the guy. That's what we're calling terrorism now? Like, it doesn't even make sense. So is it actually an unfortunate mishap? Or is it actually a dangerous terrorist that was executed? Which is it? Because if it's an unfortunate mishap, you can't call her a dangerous terrorist. If she's a dangerous terrorist, it's not an unfortunate mishap. It's actually a good thing that you decided to, one of your agents decided to kill a dangerous terrorist. So which is it? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense even within the like their own personal logical confines. Like, they are not consistent even on this, even in their own internal logic they're trying to present here. None of it makes sense at all, right?
Justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car, and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life.
So she's not a domestic terrorist, so it's an unfortunate mishap. Or is it a domestic terrorist who was executed?
And that is the tragedy. Now,
of course, it goes beyond the inherent hypocrisy in the lack of rationale and lack of logic, even in the argument that they're presenting, because every aspect of this is a lie. Because when you actually see the footage, you realize immediately how this is a lie. You see that there was no reason for her to be shot and killed. There was no reason for the gun to be pulled out even, okay? But there was no justifiable action that the ICE agent took there. None whatsoever. And that's the reason why they have to give this like inconsistent narrative. They have to present it as though this is totally appropriate. This is a terrorist, but also at the same time, it's an unfortunate mishap. That's what it is. They're throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And clearly, there are still people out there that are willing to entertain this lie. There are still people out there who are like begging for a consistent position so they can defend it unconditionally.
Other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment.
Yes, this was an inevitable outcome that many, including yourself, warned about this shit happening. Exactly. And heed my warning now, okay? Heed my warning now. It's going to get worse if we do not make this administration understand that they do not have any popular mandate whatsoever, that they're unimaginably popular due to the economy, due to all of this state repression that they are stamping out, partially due to the fact that there is no popular mandate here. Okay? If we do not take it to the streets, if we do not protest, if we do not show this administration that this is completely unacceptable, and that it is unpopular and that they have to stop, it will only get worse, because we are expanding on the permission here. We are allowing this administration to basically continue doing this. We are letting them go unpunished. We are letting them do this without any pushback whatsoever. We are obeying in advance. We are allowing them to expand the permission structure of who gets to be an ordained enemy of the state, oftentimes post-mortem. But sometimes even before that happens, sometimes before the assassination takes place.
But it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. I'm sorry, guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car.
She didn't. She didn't do that. And the evidence does not. The thing that people can see with their own two eyes is that she actually didn't do that at all. And that's the reason why they have to lie and say she tried to do that. That's the reason why they have to lie and say she was a domestic terrorist, while simultaneously taking the inconsistent position that it's actually unfortunate that it happened at all.
And the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video?
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I'm certain of is that that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reason.
I mean, how can I call out Asmonfold when the mother vice president is literally doing the exact same thing? The vice president gets called out live in front of the press pool and very quickly backs away from the initial position that this is a terrorist who is dangerously trying to kill people. These guys do not have, keep in mind that Chatter was banned by Twitch because of these same statements. Yeah, I know. Like, think about that. That's the VP. They command unimaginable power over your lives. And this is the best they have. This is the way they can argue on the situation. Yeah, Mott and Bailey all the way. The so-called free thinkers of the world, the independent thinkers of the world, running around and eating government propaganda and just like literally constantly engaging in a cycle of reasserting government propaganda. It's crazy.
Conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection.
They're both referring to malicious intent. You are deliberately misinterpreting them. Yes, except there has been no investigation and you're applying malicious intent, especially in a situation when the only readily available evidence that we have so far from eyewitness testimony and also people that have personal accounts of the victim here, and also the evidence that is readily available in broad daylight suggests that there was no intent that they are trying to claim there was. There was no malicious intent. They don't have the evidence. Normal people can see that they don't have the evidence. And that's precisely the reason why they have to add on additional things like, oh, the agent almost died, right? That's what Trump said. Trump had the audacity to claim that the agent almost died and he was in the hospital and he was like tremendously fucking victimized here in this situation. JD Vance and Kirsty Noem claimed that this was a far left domestic terrorist. Her wheels only turned after she hit him with a car. That's not true. And we saw that that's not true. What is true, however, in the piece by piece, photo by photo analysis, frame by frame analysis, that the car had already cleared the ICE agent by the time he fired the first shot. Unfortunately for you, that actually destroys the argument. Both of the ICE agent's feet can be seen in the frame by frame photo analysis. When the first shot is being fired, both of the ICE agent's feet are totally on the side of the car. And that's precisely the reason why they didn't actually get harmed at all. That's precisely the reason why JD Vance just said, I can't tell you what was in her head and her heart, but I can tell you with certainty that she had the intent of murdering that agent. And that agent had fear in his head and heart. He, on the one hand, says, like, it's always the same shit. It's the enemy is both weak and strong. That's the narrative that they're presenting. And it's so inconsistent that it is immediately inconsistent, and you can immediately see it in the footage. But they are still somehow capable of getting people on board with their narrative. They can literally tell you that the sky is not blue and you'll believe it. They're not even trying hard enough to justify this. They didn't even come out of the gate swinging with a consistent narrative to maybe lean into a gray area. They didn't say, oh, it's an unfortunate situation, but, tensions got hot and hopefully justice will be served. What they did instead was claim that she was a terrorist and that she totally deserved it. And then they turned around and said, okay, we don't know if she wanted to kill the agent, but like, you know, she's still a terrorist and actually did want to kill the agent. How do you not realize that this inconsistency in this moment is only done to make you confused and to make you still find a way to reason out why what took place and to defend the administration's ridiculous arguments?
The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it.
It's a dark realization, but if there were any actual reality to the accusations against Renee Good, purposely letting her bleed out in the car wouldn't have happened. They let her die because they knew if she survived, she would contradict whatever story the admin made up.
In their heart. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President,
In the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature, it seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned?
Yeah, conservatives cannot admit this, okay? They cannot admit this. They cannot openly claim that the first shot was fired when the cop was already cleared and the second and third shot were fired from behind, okay? And you can see it with the impact site on the windshield as well. I don't understand it. It's not even a cop. It's an ICE agent, but still, yes, it is just like, I hate to do the soy thing, but it is crazy that like they don't even dignify us with like a consistent lie or a consistent narrative here. They're just basically throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And apparently it is sticking. Like, it's crazy. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense because if she was truly trying to kill him, he would have died, okay? Especially after he shot her dead, because she would have just literally drove into him. At that point, when she's shot, she has no control over the vehicle.
Try to unite America. Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
You know, I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who was defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room.
Because he is. Because that's precisely what happened.
But first of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last year drop by 20%. Why is that drop by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are...
Or because it was already following trend lines. It was already following the same exact trend lines it was following for year over year in the Biden administration as well. But only now do you come to that recognition. It's the same principle behind claiming that they are responsible for overdose deaths going down, even though it actually happened under the Biden administration. This is not a defense of the Biden administration. Before you get at me for that, this is just a defense of the truth. Okay? For all of its faults and failures, there are still good people that work in the government, and they're trying to do their very best. And those people do actually end up succeeding in certain instances. Like the mass availability of Narcan was a major factor in the reality that overdose deaths went down for the first time ever in 2024. Okay? And that trend is seemingly going to continue following along that exact same trend line. Same goes for murders. Okay? Crime was going down. Crime was already going down. And I said this for years and years and years. Crime was going down under Biden. Crime was going down under Biden as well. But now that Trump is president, crime is going down. We saved it. We saved the world. When crime was going down under Biden, they lied and said crime was going up. And the media also played a role in this as well. They whipped up hysteria. Part of the reason why they whipped up hysteria was because they wanted to justify higher police budgets. They wanted to justify over-policing. And they got away with it. They kept lying to the population. They made people fucking lose their minds. And then by the tail end of the Biden administration, when it was very obvious that crime was already going down, and it was trending downwards regardless, they turned around and wrote articles about how why do people believe that there is crime happening when evidence points to the fact that it's not happening? People seemingly think crime is happening everywhere else but their own neighborhoods. What does this mean? Yeah, it's because you guys in the media played a role in it.
empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law. I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because
what the f? I feel like I'm taking pills. Has everyone forgotten George Floyd? There was shit just like this, how he had drugs in his system and suffered a heart attack, not the man leaning on his neck factoring in. Exactly. No, exactly. That's precisely what they said during George Floyd as well. And they never stopped propagandizing about that. And they kept saying, no, he had drugs in his system. He had a heart attack. It wasn't the fact that, Derek Chauvin actually leaned on his neck, even though he went to prison for it. He was found guilty. Candace Owens, for example, played a major role, never let go of that talking point, and consistently kept hammering it over and over again until people basically just gave in and were like, maybe this is right. I don't know. It's crazy.
To the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop it. Have your debates about policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. They are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happened. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their...
Bro, you can't do that. You can't say, I'm sorry. The amount of people that will go along with this, like, well, what was she doing? Was she asking for it? What was she wearing? What was her background? On a 37-year-old mother is not going to have the same impact as doing this to a black teenager in a white supremacist country. These guys literally are trying to Michael Brown it. They are trying to say, oh, she was no angel. I don't think they understand that they shouldn't be able to get away with doing this to Michael Brown or numerous other victims of police violence when they're black teenagers either. But at least in that circumstance, white supremacist attitudes and a lack of interest and fear that people have, tribalistic fear that people have towards black people being presented as dangerous and whatnot, factor into this argument and cause people to look the other way. Yeah, the thug had Skittles and a hoodie. What else was he supposed to do? Like, shouldn't work for Trayvon Martin, but it does in the eyes of many Americans who are at least fearful of a black teenager, okay? They are trying to super predator and thugify a 37-year-old white woman. I feel like I'm going insane. Like, it's nuts. Sure, there will be people that will go, oh, was she left-wing? Okay, she's a thug too. She's a radical too. But I don't think that's going to work in general. I don't think this is normie poison, okay? Of course, it's only normie poison if you're speaking completely irrationally. What do you mean?
Car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law. You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing, not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life.
Oh no, the poor ICE officer, bro. Why is nobody thinking about the poor ICE officer, dude? What the f? You're talking about the consequences of having liberals as the front-facing vanguard of the working class instead of actual socialists? Yeah, we can't go to the countryside and rally the masses, but that doesn't change that the Dems as the vanguard have let things slip to this point where the fascists run the narrative. I mean, 100%. This is something that I recognize as well, something that I rail against all the goddamn time. Oh no, poor Jonathan Ross, dude. Poor Jonathan Ross. Star Tribune identifies ICE agent who fatally shot woman in Minneapolis. His name is Jonathan Ross, by the way. piece of shit. Jonathan Ross was dragged in a separate incident last year by a fleeing driver, according to court reports. Poor Jonathan Ross, dude. And they'll use this previous incident to justify his actions on this one, not realizing that he was wrong in the first incident to be in front of the car to begin with, and he was certainly in the wrong in this second incident. What are we doing at that point? If we are going to say it's appropriate, we're going to say that if an ICE agent gets in front of you, if an ICE agent gets in front of your car, okay, if it's even in the front side of your car, it's a death sentence. It's over. It's a death sentence every time. They can just shoot you and that's it. They can just shoot you and the government will call you a terrorist. If you are ever in the vicinity of an ICE agent, and by the way, they don't even need to tell you that they're ICE agents. They can be masked. They don't even have to be properly certified. As we know, there are plenty of instances where people have lied about being ICE agents to try and kidnap people and shit, you know, because that's the new environment that we're existing in. If someone with a gun comes up to you and then even claims that they're ICE or doesn't even have to say that they're ICE and they shoot and kill you, if they're an ICE agent, the government will turn around and say that was a justifiable murder. Sorry, sucks to suck. It's ridiculous. Yeah, this is pretty much it. Why did she freak out? All she had to do was comply. Like, people cannot see themselves. Weirdly enough, a lot of people just simply cannot see themselves in the shoes of the victim here. And it's crazy because you are much more likely to be in that situation as the victim. She could have been any of us as to be the child, not me. I would never try to run over law enforcement officers. Interesting admission, though. You are very gross looking, and that's why you don't have a husband or children like you obviously desperately want. True facts stated. The other thing I wanted to show you is this. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Noam says the shooter was previously dragged by a car in June. If it was June 17, 2025, Roberto Carlos Munoz, this wasn't the person, right? This wasn't actually the person. We now know it was a different person. But my point over it still stands. So I said, so I guess the ICE meta is coming close enough to the hood of a stopped vehicle from the side and you get a legal. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy that now you could just do that. You could just stand next to the car and shoot someone and it's illegal. It's allowed.
What we've done is actually gotten 2.5 million illegal aliens out without any of the really big marquee things that we've been working on. That was just simple willpower and the President of the United States coming in and saying this is done. I think we're going to see those deportation numbers ramp up as we get more and more people online working for ICE, going door to door and making sure that if you're an illegal alien, you've got to get out of this country. And if you want to come back, apply through the proper channel. What we've done is actually gotten
door to door, by the way. Yeah. Broken foot of the Minnesota shooter. What's he doing with his phone? Yeah, look how broken his foot is, dude. Look at how hardcore. Look at how hardcore he was harmed here. Crazy. Yeah, also, Jonathan Ross appears to have served in the Iraq War based on the photos of him reviewed by The Intercept and lives in Minnesota. And there you have it. This is what we talk about when we say fascism is colonialism turned inwards, okay? Fascism is the imperial boomerang. You send these guys overseas and you get them you train them to become killers. You train them to do apprehensions. You train them to kill people over and over again. And then you bring them back here. They don't have any job prospects or anything like that. And they join ICE. And they have that exact same muscle memory. And they end up killing American citizens on American streets. You said that word so much it has no meaning. No, the reason why you have to say that is because the word does have meaning, but you don't want it to apply in this circumstance because you kind of agree with it. But you still recognize that the word has weight to it. You've been trained into thinking that fascism is wrong, but you simultaneously want this version of fascism to be normalized. One day, if there ever comes a day when people are proud fascists, you will openly wear that banner. It's just that you can't openly say it right now, so you have to cope and go, oh, you just used it so much it has no meaning. What can an administration do for you to recognize that this is not dissimilar to what has taken place in the past, a fascist administration in the past? I'm from the UK, mate. Okay. So I'm confused as to what this has to do with anything. What I simply don't understand is you're from the United Kingdom, and yet here you are in my chat LARPing as though you are a MAGA hog in the United States of America. This doesn't make any sense to me. What doesn't make any sense to me is that you guys don't even have the same kind of violent incidents because you don't have the same level of gun violence that takes place. Back in the day, at least, English people had the dignity to look at American gun violence and American police brutality and go, yeah, that's really up. That's pretty unacceptable, actually. Nowadays, with the hog universality setting in, with fascism becoming more of a global phenomena with like their own version under the banner of MAGA, UK hogs have decided to present themselves as MAGA hogs for some weird reason. Have some respect, dude. I mean, you see Keir Starmer sucking Donald Trump's daily basis, and that doesn't even frustrate you a little bit? Where's your sovereignty? Where is your dignity? You've lost your national dignity, not because there are brown people coming into your island. You've lost your national dignity because you are a vassal state relegated to servile status, and you have to sit there and present yourself like you're a right-winger in the United States of America in the chat of American content creators. American hogs disgust me, but god damn, you disgust me way further. Let's take a look. I love playing this game. You the goat. They feel safe to threaten or call for violence. 6 feet under, the dog zapper is chatting shit. Dame, did you just show it to the loo? Straight to jail. UK is the same for some reason. Start some mother, not punch, zap the dog, round them up. Now we just have paid. They feel safe to threaten and call for violence. I'm not saying I'm right wing. You're calling me it. Brother, you just complained about people threatening to call for violence while you literally said straight to jail, round them up, 6 feet under, start shooting some. So pot kettle, the pot and the kettle here. What are you saying? No wonder you get so ass mad when you hear someone say, like, this is fascism through and through. Also, this level of obsession that you're in other people's chats, still talking shit about me. God damn, dude. How do you not realize you have lost your humanity? You don't have any. You have no goal or no purpose in this life, okay? Nothing.